Today on Pots and Trowels we're planting and sowing tender vegetables, and that's brought to you with the support of Cobra Garden, Mr Fothergills and Darlac. Hello and welcome to Pots and Trowels. Well, here we are, beautiful spring day, but it is very windy where we are in North Yorkshire today. So instead of being outside where the compost and the seed was flying all over the place, we've come into the greenhouse. And the reason is because I'm going to sow some tender vegetables. And now is a good time to sow tender vegetables if you haven't already done it. If you live in the south of the country, you might have sown them a week or two ago. But certainly here in North Yorkshire, I aim to get the plants ready. And I'm talking of things like runner beans, dwarf French beans, courgettes and sweet corn. All the plants that need a little bit of protection, I aim to have those ready to plant out into the garden at the end of May or even early June if the weather's still a little bit on the cool side. So if you can give them about 3 weeks, that's ideal. In fact, an old gardener said to me many years ago, if you're sowing directly into the ground with runner beans, don't sow until the 12th of May, because by then it gives them 2 weeks to push their shoots up above ground level, and hopefully by then the danger of frost is out of the way. So if you have sown early, you've got to hold them back until it's time to plant them out. In fact, I have sown some early. I did some in these fibre pots several weeks ago, and these I'm using for growing in containers. This is a dwarf runner bean called Hestia. I've noticed there's a little bit of damage. I must have a little slug in the greenhouse here. So these have been grown in this tiny little greenhouse, no heat, just frost free, and these have made nice strong plants. So I'm actually going to plant these out now, and what I'm going to do is plant them into some large containers here. These are about 12 inches in diameter. I've filled them with multi-purpose compost. This is a peat-free one. You can sometimes find little bits of the wood in there. And I've also added in a little bit of slow release fertilizer, because I do find with the peat-free especially, they run out of nutrients quickly. And I've sown the beans in here. They've made nice strong plants. This one only grows to about 14 inches tall, so it's ideal for containers. I'm leaving them, of course, in the fibre pots, and all I'm literally going to do is to plant 3 of these pots into this container like that, and that will be fine. They will bush out, fill that, and then in summertime we'll get masses and masses of full-sized runner beans from there. So a great one, it's called Hestia. If you're looking for a dwarf bean, that's the one that you need to do. But if we are then going to be sowing them, then there's 2 ways you can do it. One is you can sow them directly into the garden, but I prefer to sow them into containers. So I'm using these cell trays, old bedding plant ones, and what I'm going to do is fill them with the compost, but there's no added fertilizer to this because these are only going to be in here for a few weeks before they go into the garden. And of course, you know, some people always like to get their runner beans in early. I regularly get calls when I'm doing, you know, gardening phone-ins on Leeds and York, where people by April have got runner bean plants on their windowsill that are probably 2 feet tall because they've sown them in March. Don't sow them early, but you can certainly carry on sowing, and you can sow runner beans pretty much up until the end of June and you'll still get a good crop. So this is a variety here called Aintree, which is a really good one. I've filled my tray. I want to grow enough here to plant up a wigwam of 8 canes. So I've got 9 here, so I've got a spare plant, because usually you get 100% germination. Last year we did 2 wigwams and we had far too many plants, and then it's just a case of dropping the seeds into the hole. So it's just 1 in each hole. Simple as that, and these will be watered in, and these then will be left inside this cold greenhouse, which again is absolutely fine. Just cover those over. I will put a label in them and I will water them, and they will be allowed to germinate. And when they're about the size of these plants here, which will at this time of the year they grow very quickly, only be 2 or 3 weeks, they'll be perfect to put outside. I do exactly the same with dwarf French beans. These are a much smaller seed, and I do these in the 12s. They make a smaller plant, so you can use a smaller cell, but I will do these in exactly the same way as the runner beans. Start them off in here. If you haven't got a greenhouse, don't worry, a cold frame or even outside in a sunny position where it's sheltered. And if it is a cool night, just put a little bit of fleece over them, or even just lift the tray onto the kitchen windowsill and put it out again the following morning. So you don't have to have a greenhouse to raise them. And the other thing that I'm going to be sowing today are courgettes. Again, courgettes won't stand any amount of frost at all, just a tiny little bit of frost on them and it will damage them. So these can be sown, depending where you live, sort of April till well into June. And I'm going to start mine off in pots, but I'm going to do them in fibre pots, very similar to the way I started off the runner beans. And they're a nice big seed. So I've got some fibre pots here. These are made from wood pulp. Of course, years ago they used to be made from peat, but they don't make them from peat anymore. You've got to decide how many you want, because last year again we did too many courgettes and I got fed up of having them for breakfast, dinner and tea. So how many, Joe, how many courgettes this year? 3?
That's
4?
enough.
3?
3.
You sure?
Yeah.
Not one for luck?
3.
Okay, I might sneak another one in when you're not looking. Oh dear, that's not the greenhouse. So fill your pots up and with the compost like that, and then I've got my seed here. The variety I'm sowing is one called Defender. It's a really good one. It's an F1 hybrid. It's really vigorous, doesn't seem to suffer from mildew, and you get masses and masses of fruits on there as long as you pick on a regular basis. Again, germination is usually good. Sometimes you could put 2 in there, but these are fresh seeds. I'm just going to drop one of those in there. The hole is about probably 3/4 of an inch deep. I don't know whether you can see the seed down there. It's probably filling in with compost. And then just cover them in, label water, and they again will germinate with just that little bit of protection and be fine. And here's one that I did earlier, again in a fibre pot. This one about 3 weeks ago, just so I'd got an early one to plant out. You could plant them out in the garden under cloches, or as I said earlier, if you're in the south, but I'm going to plant this one also in a container. What I want to do this year is to grow a range of vegetables in pots just to see how they compare. With a plant pot in there. So this is the same compost, a little bit of the slow release in there. Doesn't matter that the leaves, the seed leaves are going yellow. That's just an indication it's ready for potting on. In fact, I can see some of the roots are just starting to grow through there, which is a good indication that it is time to move it on. And when I pot this, I'm going to pot it just slightly deeper than it is now, but I want it so the seed leaves are just above compost level like that. So the seed leaves are there, but it's not going to rock around in the wind. And then finally, what I'm going to do with that is just to give it a drink, to settle it in, and that will now grow away really quickly. So 1 plant per 12-inch pot, and as long as we keep that watered in a sunny position through the summer, and we feed it when it starts to fruit with a high potash liquid feed, sort of a tomato feed once a week, we'll get loads and loads and loads of courgettes. So I've got my 3 here. Oh, plus that, I've got 4 after all. Enjoy sowing your tender veg. Thank you for watching Pots and Trowels, and remember all of our videos that we've done over the last, getting on for 3 years now, can be found on Facebook and also on YouTube, where you can look at everything that we've done. Next week we're going to be down at Dennis's garden and I'm going to show you how to lift and divide primulas, so we'll see you then. Bye.